Moby Dick and the Effects of Printed Literature. Moby Dick is a classic piece of American literature that tells the epic adventure of the members of the whaler Pequod and their journey to kill the infamous titular whale. The book was written by Herman Melville and published in 1851. The specific item that will be examined is an edition of Moby Dick that was printed in 1851 during one of the first publication runs. In today's age, the amount of books published has drastically decreased compared to decades past. This is due to the digital transformation of print in a digital world. If every new book were to only be published digitally, then readers may lose historical context that accompanies a physical copy of a book, changing how the author may have meant for their work to be read. Although the shift to the digital age conveniences readers for the most part, some aspects of the author's original intentions are lost in the transition from the physical copy of the book to the digital print. Herman Melville was a 19th century author and poet best known for his works Typee and Moby Dick. He was born in New York and received formal education until the age of 13, when his father died. At the age of 19, Melville signed on to work as a green hand on a whaler vessel. He would work as a sailor for the next 3 years. While Melville was at sea, he spent most of his free time writing down his nautical experiences and perfecting his writing style. Melville's experiences at sea heavily influenced his work, including his first work Typee, which was published in 1845 when Melville was only 26. The book would be a bestseller and launch his writing career. Melville would publish Moby Dick in 1851 to a lukewarm response, and his writing career began to falter after that. Melville never reclaimed the fame of his initial rise, and by the time of his death, he'd become a forgotten name. The public rediscovered Melville after his death, and today he is one of the most revered American authors. During Melville's lifetime, there were only 3,215 copies of Moby Dick sold in the United States, and another 500 copies sold in the United Kingdom. In the immediate 5 years after Melville's death, there were another 2,248 copies of Moby Dick sold, initiating the beginning of the resurgence of Melville. The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is lucky enough to possess a copy of Moby Dick published in 1851, the original year of publication for the novel. Although the item was not published during the first publication run, it was still published in the same year. One of the main differences between the original publication run and the publication of this item is the color of the cover of the book. Whereas the original book was published in an all-orange cover, this item has a deep blue cover, as well as on the spine. The only variation from the book is the title of the novel, written perpendicular to the spine and an orange background. The pages of this item are extremely brittle and feature moderate water damage and water markings on some pages. Herman Melville's Moby Dick is an American epic detailing the experiences of Captain Ahab on his quest to exact revenge on the white whale named Moby Dick. The story begins with the narrator of the book giving his name and one of the most famous opening lines in literature history, "Call me Ishmael." The sailor Ishmael lets the reader know that he intends on joining a whaling vessel, and eventually secures a position on the Pequod, a ship that is decorated with the bones of sperm whales and captained by Ahab. On Captain Ahab's previous voyage, he had encountered Moby Dick, and the whale bit off his leg from the knee down. After this, Ahab made it his sole journey to kill the whale at any expense, even going as far as to make his false leg out of the jaw of a sperm whale. Ahab hires a private team of harpooners that he smuggled on board to kill the infamous whale. As the Pequod comes across other whaling ships, Ahab always asks for information on Moby Dick. On one of the ships, a man claims that anyone searching for Moby Dick is doomed. The prophecy seems to be coming true as the crew encounters multiple near-fatal encounters. On their voyage, the Pequod comes across Captain Boomer, the captain of the Samuel Enderby, but has lost an arm to Moby Dick. Unlike Captain Ahab, this captain feels lucky to still have his life and doesn't understand Ahab's obsession with killing Moby Dick. The Pequod encounters a typhoon, starting an electrical fire, and Ahab sees this as a sign that he will find success on his voyage. However, the first mate of the ship, Mr. Starbuck, considers killing Ahab in order to ensure the safety of everyone else. The Pequod heads toward the equator and finds Moby Dick, and Moby Dick destroys the harpoon boat that Captain Ahab was on. The next day, the whale is spotted and is harpooned. Again, the whale attacks Ahab's boat and kills one of the crew members. The chase continues into the third day, when Moby Dick rams into the Pequod and sinks it. Ahab is killed as he is thrown out of his boat by a harpoon line. As the Pequod sinks, it creates a vortex that drags all of the crew members down to their deaths. Ishmael is the only surviving member of the crew, as he was thrown from a harpoon boat early in the chase. He then floats on the coffin of one of the other crew members until a nearby whaling ship rescues him. One of the interesting aspects about the novel is that Melville chooses to write the story from the first-person perspective of Ishmael. This allows Melville to channel many of his own experiences and thoughts into his work. Although Herman Melville never traveled aboard the Pequod and never followed the directions of the unwavering Captain Ahab, Moby Dick acts as almost a memoir of sorts for Melville. Through his unique writing style, Moby Dick and Ishmael serve as his vessel to deliver some of his thoughts on his faltering fame and place in literature. One of the most gleaming examples of this is when Ishmael is questioning the decision of his captain and fellow crew members for putting him and the rest of the crew in peril danger. Ishmael thinks to himself, "There are certain queer times and occasions in this strange mixed affair that we call life, when a man takes this whole universe for a vast practical joke, though the wit thereof he but dimly discerns, and more than suspects that the joke is at nobody's expense but his own." As Melville's fame and sales had declined since the publication of Typee, he surely thought that life was playing a cruel joke on him since he was blessed with such writing abilities and vision, but was drifting out of the minds of the public. While looking at the item that the university possesses, it is not hard to envision Melville writing his unique memoir-esque novel directly on the pages of the book. The item clearly wears its age on the pages. It is easy to imagine Melville cooped up under the deck of his ship, working on his novel and writing down his experiences as he sails the world. Even the water markings on the page give the impression of specks of salt water finding its way in between the pages to leave speckles of history and actual experience. After looking at this item and reading the book, I cannot help but view this novel as if Melville was pouring out his own experiences and obsessions in between the covers titled Moby Dick. If this item did not exist, or I did not get the opportunity to view this item during the course of this project, then I would not have been able to come to the conclusion that Melville mirrored his own obsessions and life in the work. This item is a historical artifact, since it was published before Melville got to see its ascension and recognition as one of the great American epics. Many authors use the cover as another platform to deliver information about their work or for advertisement purposes. Although this particular item does not utilize the cover as an extension of the work contained, the leather still provides texture and a feel for the age of the item. Other publications of Moby Dick feature prominent and recognizable artwork on the cover that help draw many possible customers in. Many ebooks will contain some form of artwork to differentiate the different works, but the association between the work and the artwork is lost in ebook form. If and when the shift of literature completely moves to a digital platform, cover artwork will be lost in the transition. However, there are definite benefits of the digital transition of literature. When a consumer purchases an ebook, they are the owners of that book for the remainder of their life. If certain media platforms never go out of existence, for example iTunes, Amazon, then consumers will always have a copy of the work and never have to worry about the wear and tear that comes with usage of a printed text. While looking at the item, the pages were clearly very dry and without delicate care could easily tear. Since there are no physical pages with an ebook, then there is no chance of physical damage. Since there is no physical copy, consumers will never have to worry about losing the book. For this particular item, it would be much easier to read the work digitally than from the pages of Moby Dick found at UNC. This does not mean that it would be easier to read a digital copy of the work than a modern print edition. Although ebooks and electronic tablets allow the user to read their books at any time of the day while producing its own illumination, many people find it difficult and distracting to read digital text on a screen. For those that aren't distracted by the electronic screen and enjoy reading digital media on a mobile device or a computer, only have the ability to read the work when their battery is charged or while they have electrical power. Even though it may be easier to read the work digitally than via the copy of Moby Dick located in the library of UNC, this particular item has survived longer than any human in the same time frame. While looking at this item, it makes it easier to see and feel what Herman Melville experienced during his time at sea that so heavily influenced much of his work. Seeing the item enabled me to fully understand Melville's extension of his life and thoughts into his work. Go Thurs.